Welcome back to another video. If you can hear me, because we've got a nice big water fountain in the background. I'm here at one of the local shopping centres where I used to work, Pacific Fair, where we do have an EMF. It's a pretty cool setup. It's kind of like a bit of a football stadium, if you will. It's got a lot of open areas. We've got the moon there, look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Lots to do on the Gold Coast. Perhaps I'll do a couple of more videos here and do a bit of a tour, but we're here to get serious because we're talking about today why you're not growing. And why is that? It's probably something quite simple, and it is. And once again, it's all contextual, right? But you're here because you want to know how to grow a big, massive back. You want that V-taper. Yeah, you want those barn door lats, man. You know, you want that thickness. You want those traps that stand off the back of your neck. Like everyone talked about Bane and Batman, but we want to stay and keep it natural. That's what we're about on this channel, because you can do it natural. But anyway, without further ado, guys, drop this video a like. Make sure to comment if you've got anything positive to say, and subscribe for weekly videos. Adidas is sponsoring this video. I'm joking, they're not. And let's get into it. Now, one of the biggest reasons why people don't grow is they're just not training hard enough. And I often talk about training smart, and I do stand by that. I think you've got to train smart before you train hard. But you need to create a demand for the body to actually grow. If you don't provide enough stimulus, you're not going to grow. If you provide too much in an unintelligent way with crap form, you're going to injure yourself. So first of all, yes, you want to have a level of form, especially on the big movements. And now with the back, a lot of people really get this wrong because they're not setting the scapula, as you can see in some of these exercise videos, and it's a really simple mistake to make. But once you fix it, you'll notice a massive difference in the development of your lats. You'll also get a far better pump, a better squeeze, and you'll be able to take things much closer to failure on the appropriate exercises. Form is probably one of the biggest mistakes, and this is going to be the same with any muscle group, but specifically with the back, it's setting the scapula, so the shoulder blades. So there are a couple of positions to consider when we do this. So we've got retraction and protraction. So think retraction is back, protraction is forward. We then have elevation and depression. Right, so think depression, coming down, being depressed, elevation, lifting up, retraction, coming back, and protraction, coming forward. And a lot of the time what we see in the gym with people training is they're in this protracted position too much. Now, it's good to spend a little bit of time in that position outside of the gym or with specific functional rehabilitation exercises. However, when we're in the gym, we want to make sure that we're in this retracted and depressed position for the most part. One, because it puts the shoulder girdle, so the shoulder itself, in a safe position, so we're not pulling up into the traps or into the neck muscles, etc. And straining, we're actually activating the lat, which is the bigger part of the back. Okay? Now, there's different musculature of the back. We've got the lats, we've got the traps, upper and lower, rhomboids, teres minor, all of these things, right? Erector spinae, you name it. But to keep it simple, the biggest part of the back is the lats, and we're going to be using all the other muscles anyway, synergistically, if we learn to move correctly. So what we want to do is when we're doing any rowing, instead of, for the most part, thinking about just coming back and protracting forward, think about keeping the shoulders back and down. You don't want them too far back, you don't want to be arched, because then you'll lose a neutral spine, and we can talk more about that in another video. But again, keep a neutral spine as much as possible, shoulders back and down. Almost think about bringing them down so you're squeezing the lats underneath here. So you can see if you come down, you think, yeah, I'm activating the lats already. They're on. And then instead of thinking about coming straight back, letting the shoulder come forward, think coming, if we were doing a seated row or a horizontal row, think about back and down for the most part. And that way we're going to get the lower part of the lat, and we're going to be able to develop, because the lat insert's right down here, and then we can get that V taper. Generally we're just you know, using more of the lat, we're using more of the length of the lat, we're getting a range of motion out of it, and obviously over time, decreasing body fat, we create the illusion of a V-taper, and then we can also get some big quads and glutes, and we can have that tiny waist or the X-frame that we all want. So again, think about pulling back and down for the most part, rather than, so it's almost like I say to clients, like a train coming this way, rather than just coming straight back. Now that is good if you can keep these back and down, if you're trying to get more of the rear delt rows, or you want to get the upper and lower trap, you can definitely do that. But again, mainstream movements, this is where people go wrong. I didn't get taught this for a long time, and I couldn't really activate my lats. Something else that you want to do as well, if you're holding onto the implement, the bar, whatever it is, think about breaking it so your shoulder blades are coming back and down, and that way again you're going to be able to activate your lats a lot more. You're going to be able to move more load, you're going to be able to obviously build more muscle, create more volume. So what we've got to consider is that back is one of the biggest muscle groups in the body, and oftentimes we train a lot of the other smaller groups that we see, for example, chest, arms, etc., a lot more than we train the back. And if we think about it, we don't live our life backwards, we live our life forwards, meaning we are facing this way. So it would make sense that a lot of the time when we're in our form, a lot of us are in this position, right? So that can be a lack of training the back, also the posterior chain, rear of the body, things like the rear delts, etc., to kind of create a more neutral or a positive posture, positive spine movement. So if anything, yes, there is a rule of thumb that for every push we should do 2 pulls. Now, there's always a rule against the law, but we want to consider that there is a lot of variety in exercise selection, and we want to make sure that we vary the difference of vertical pulling versus horizontal pulling. And as we've already talked about with form, it's very important that we get this right and we use those different variances, and then we also identify over time where our weaknesses are versus where our strengths are. Now again, it's not rocket science. There's only so many vertical and horizontal pulls we can do in the gym. And yes, now and again, it's good to move through different variances, different torsions, but I want to keep it simple. If we're here to build muscle, so we want to make sure we've got a variety of vertical pulls, horizontal pulls, and we want to have a mix of pronated, so overhand grip, supinated underhand grip, and then also neutral grip as well. Hopefully I've got that right. If not, I'm going to have to go back to the textbook. More to the point, it's about having enough variety. At the same time, don't have too much. Understand the variance and crossovers. If you are training your back multiple times a week, which you should be, when we talk about frequency, we should be making sure we're ticking all those boxes. So we've got different hand grips, we've got different vertical and horizontal pulls, and we're keeping it simple. Me again. Fresh Food People, still not sponsored. Pop that down there. All right, so I've already talked about training intensity a little bit at the start of the video in terms of training hard. And the reality of it is, once you learn to train smart, you've got a pragmatic approach, you've got a structure, you've got a programming, you do need to take it to the house. Now, that doesn't mean training till failure all the time, and I wouldn't advise that, as I've talked about on other videos, to be doing that on the big movements, the big compound movements. Reason being, they're high risk, high recovery, but they are high reward. And if you're doing that all the time, you're gonna limit your potential for the rest of the workout. You're also gonna limit your potential to be able to train that muscle group again in the next 24, 72 hours, whatever that may be. As I mentioned, in terms of frequency, in terms of training more than once a week or more than once per muscle group, so 2 to 3 times frequency a week. So that is something to consider as well, in terms of, you know, getting it in and actually getting it done. On the smaller isolation movements or on your accessory lifts, so after you know, your first 1 or 2 main movements, you can push a little bit closer to failure. Machines, they're a bit more lower risk, low recovery in terms of you being guided, so you know, you're not having to stabilize yourself. Think of like a barbell row versus something like a chest supported machine row. You know, you can really take that to the house and you know, really load that volume up. So it's really good to lean on and have that variety, but starting off with your most prioritized movement. Another thing that a lot of people don't consider is also the frequency, which we talked about before. So again, it's a big muscle group. We want to be training it multiple times a week. Every muscle group, especially if you're a natural lifter, you want to be training 2 to 3 times a week, because you can't just put enough volume in a short space of time. There's just not enough. If you only got 1 hour or 1 hour and a half or whatever it is each week to put into one muscle group, your body can only tolerate so much intensity, so much volume, so much damage at one time. And obviously you're only opening that anabolic window once a week for that muscle, and then you're waiting a whole 7 days for it to come around. So it's much more advantageous if you can train that muscle group got a couple of fans multiple times a week, let it recover. So I would say, if you're training, say you train back on Monday, you have Tuesday, Wednesday, you can train Wednesday if you really want that. I'd probably go Thursday or Friday again. You've got 3 to 4 days full to recover, and again, you're spreading the volume. So you're putting enough volume in here, you're putting enough volume in here that you can recover from, and over time that's increasing. So therefore, what you did in one session is now double, tripled, quadrupled over time, and therefore you do that with all the other muscle groups. How many times have you trained per year, okay, versus what you would have done if it was once a week, and the volume that you've actually put into that muscle is far greater, but you've spread it across the week so you can recover, you can actually lift that, you can actually do it with good form, etc., and therefore you can grow more muscle. Keep that one in mind. Pick a good couple vertical and horizontal pulling movements and learn how to do them correctly. Load them up over time, and when you stagnate, that is when you should progress or change the variation, or even change the rep ranges. In terms of rep ranges, you can really tack that on in terms of with your bigger compound movements, the barbell rows, the first movements, the heavier movements. I would generally recommend the lower rep range. You don't want to be going sort of 12s and 14s on those things, especially if you're not drop setting them. You're better to stick between like the 4 at the very minimum, if you're powerlifting, all the way up to sort of 6 to 8. You can get a lot of volume, you get a lot of intensity within that. And then as you go through your workout and you get more to the accessory or even the isolation movements, that's when you can really sort of rack the reps up. It's more of the try and do a YouTube video, eh, mate? Disrespectful. That's when you can really get into the more sort of bodybuilding work, if you like, and hypertrophy rep ranges. And then again, at the end, drop setting, supersetting, things like that over time. It's not always about doing as much as you can, but going through phases of variation and making sure ultimately that you're progressing over time, you're getting enough, you're causing enough stimulus per session, then obviously your nutrition is adequate, and also your rest and recovery. So guys, I'm gonna leave it there because I wanna keep these videos, these sort of how-to ones, a little bit shorter, a little bit sharper. I wanna get in there, give you the juice. I know I've rambled on a little bit. I'm gonna work on that. But as always, guys, if you like the video, make sure to give it a like, comment if you wanna see something specifically, and if you've got more to say, and of course, subscribe, click that bell icon so you get notified when we drop new videos every week. And of course, until next time, stay fearless.